Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope you are doing well this morning. How is the weather by you? Angel reported that it was chilly and cloudy in his neighborhood yesterday. Zaire said that it was cloudy. It had rained earlier and it was getting kind of warm in the evening. How about by you today? How is it? Is it foggy? Is it sunny and clear? Is it warm? Is it cold? I don't know. Let me know. But today we'll start off with Wayside School is Falling Down, chapter 28, which is called Valooosh. Excuse me. Let's see, there you go. All right, here we go. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "I have some wonderful news," she said. The children stopped what they were doing and looked up. They waited for Mrs. Jules to tell them the wonderful news. "You are a very lucky class indeed," said Mrs. Jules. "Mrs. Valooosh, the world-famous teacher, will be coming here at Wayside School to school. She will teach you how to dance." Everyone was still waiting for the wonderful news. "Isn't that exciting?" asked Mrs. Jules. "You will see her every Wednesday instead of going to PE. PE is gym, physical education." "Well, will girls have to dance with boys?" Jenny asked. "I suppose," said Mrs. Jules. "Gross!" exclaimed Leslie. "Yuck!" said Dana. "Will boys have to dance with girls?" asked Ron. "Obviously," said Mrs. Jules. "No way," said Eric Fry. "I'd rather dance with a dead rat," said Terrence. Everyone started talking at once about cooties and warts and other horrible diseases you could get from touching boys or girls. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell again and told them to settle down. "Mrs. Jules, I don't need to take dancing lessons," said Eric Bacon. "I already know how to dance." "Yes, Eric, I've seen you dance," Mrs. Jules said sarcastically. Eric Bacon was a great break dancer, but break dancing was no longer allowed at Wayside School. That was because every time Eric danced, he broke something. "Mrs. Valooosh will teach you the grace and beauty of classical ballroom dancing," said Mrs. Jules. Everybody groaned. Oh. On Wednesday, they headed down to their first dancing lesson, except Myron. Myron went to PE. "How come Myron never has to do anything?" asked Jason. "I don't know," said Calvin. "I've been wondering about that, too." "Myron's father must be friends with the president," said Bebe. "I think Myron gave Mr. Kidswatter $1,000, said Todd. "No, I bet he's blackmailing Mrs. Jules," said Jenny. "How could he do that?" asked Benjamin. "Maybe Mrs. Jules got really silly," said Jenny, "and she danced on top of her desk with a lampshade on her head, and Myron took her picture. So now Mrs. Jules has to let Myron do anything he wants, or else he'll show the picture to Mr. Kidswatter." "That makes sense," said Mac. "Except if she had a lampshade on her head, how would Mr. Kidswatter know it was Mrs. Jules?" asked Todd. No one knew the answer to that. They entered the room on the second floor. "Welcome," said Mrs. Valooosh, a strange-looking woman with bright red hair. It looked as if her head was on fire. "My name is Miss Valooosh. It is so wonderful to be here at Wayside School." She wore pink tights and a sparkling pink top. "I hope we will be friends, yes?" she asked. Nobody said a word. All around were red and green balls. There was also the one yellow ball. This was the room where Louis kept the balls for lunch and recess. It was also the room that was always used for the school dances. It was the ballroom. "So," exclaimed Mrs. Valooosh, "who will be first?" Everyone tried to hide behind someone else. Mrs. Valooosh put her hands on Ron's face. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ron," he squealed. "Ronaldo," bellowed Mrs. Valooosh, "king of the gypsies." "I don't know how to dance," said Ron. "Dance?" said Mrs. Valooosh. She looked very surprised. "We are not going to dance." She said, "We are not?" asked Ron. "No," said Ronaldo, whispered Mrs. Valooosh. "We are going to tango." She put her left arm around Ron's waist. Then she grabbed his left hand with her right and stuck it way out in front of them. Suddenly the music started. Mrs. Valooosh dragged poor Ron across the room as she stomped her feet in the beat. Dump, dump, da-da-dump, dump, dump, da-da-dump, dump, dump, da-da-dump, dump, dump, dump. "Hey!" When she yelled hey, She threw Ron up in the air and clapped her hands. Ron turned a somersault mid-air. Then Miss Valooosh caught him. They tangoed back to where they started. Ron's eyes were spinning in opposite directions. Hey, that looked like fun, said Mauricia. Do me. Very well, said Mrs. Valooosh. She grabbed Mauricia and tangoed with her across the room. Da-dum, dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum. Hey! She threw Mauricia up in the air and clapped her hands. Mauricia turned a double somersault before Mrs. Valooosh caught her. They tangoed back to the front. My turn, said Terence. Mrs. Valooosh tangoed with Terence, and the other kids stomped their feet with Mrs. Valooosh. They all yelled hey at the same time and clapped their hands. One by one, Mrs. Valooosh tangoed with every kid in the class. The other kids danced with each other. Boys danced with girls, and girls danced with boys. They didn't care. Paul danced with Leslie. Dana danced with John. Terence danced with Rondi. Allison danced with Jason. DJ danced with Kathy. Todd danced with Joy. Hey, they all shouted together. Of course, they weren't strong enough to throw each other up in the air. Instead, they tried to trip each other and throw each other to the ground. Hey! Even Kathy was having fun. Hey, she shouted as she tried to knock DJ to the ground. They also threw the balls at each other. Hey! Mrs. Valooosh began to get tired. Sometimes she didn't catch the children after she tossed them in the air. Dee Dee crashed to the floor. Wow, she said. This is better than murder the man with the ball. Hey! Kind of like a game of dodgeball. At last, the music stopped. Da-dum, dum, dum, da-dum, dum, dum, da-dum, dum, dum. And everyone shouted, hey, one last time. Mrs. Valooosh clapped her hands. Wonderful, she said. Fantastique. They all staggered out of the ballroom, cut up, bruised, and bleeding. Next week, we waltz, Mrs. Valooosh called after them. So, how did everyone like dancing? Asked Mrs. Jules when they returned to class. Dance? Asked Miss Ronaldo, king of the gypsies. We didn't dance. You didn't? Asked Mrs. Jules. No, said Ronaldo. We tangoed. Everyone cheered. It was wonderful, exclaimed Kathy. Fantastique, said Terence. Myron was sorry he missed it. I can't wait until next Wednesday, said Todd. I love this book. I hope you like it as much as I do. So today, what could you do today to challenge yourself? Well, make sure you look at the weather. Do you ever think of trying to take like your cereal or something small and making math problems out of that? You could take and make rows of math, like to help you practice your times tables. Sorry, Neville's here. He's a little shy, but he's here. Like make 2 times 7, 2 rows of 7, and then count them out to practice your times tables. Of course, ask your adults' permission first. Make sure if you're going to do it, you do it on a clean surface, not the floor. Okay, and then you can eat it after you're done. Just a thought, a way to practice multiplication. Or you could take a big number like 28 and separate it into 4 groups. How many are in each group? Math is everywhere, friends. Okay, don't forget to practice your math. You could write up a story today of what you've been doing this week. What have you been up to? You could write your own weather report. There's so many things to do. I will be on later. I'm hoping for a rainbow. I don't know about the weather. I do have a backup plan. So check back later today and I will have something up science-y, I promise. Okay? Until then, boys and girls, have a great morning. Bye.